This PowerPoint presentation will help you understand the personality factors part of the research paper by defining the word personality and by providing an overview of relevant research. Personality and its role in education and learning is a topic normally covered in psychology classes. Everyday people who are not psychologists use the term personality to describe a variety of things. How someone behaves, his attitude, his skills, his values, and his unique features. We often define personalities with adjectives like shy, aggressive, smart, airheaded, generous, pensive, and so on. In psychology, though, personality is defined more formally as the set of relatively enduring behavioral characteristics, including thoughts, and internal predispositions that describe how a person reacts to the environment. Notice that the key to personality is behavior. Yes, your behavior is influenced by your attitude, skills, values, and so on, but it is your behavior that is viewed as your personality. Behavior patterns are learned and relatively stable. So, like learning, personality can change, but the change is very slow. For example, if someone's personality is labeled angry, that person could choose to attend anger management classes. His behavior would change, and as a result, his personality would be described differently. In our assignment, students are asked to determine their personalities by taking a very short personality inventory. We want to find out the relationship between their personalities and their choice of learning strategies and learning styles. In a longer study, the ELLs could be asked to change their personalities if the learning strategies and style preferences were not helping them to acquire English fast enough and well enough. For example, I have heard from many native English speakers in a college prep class that they don't want to hang with the old crowd anymore because they just don't get it. These students are making a decision to socialize with a group that values education more than what their former peers do. Their education has become so important to them, they decide to change their social circle. The old crowd, though, might interpret this as snooty or snobbish, a change in personality. Personality is behavior, and behavior can change. Think back to the beginning of the semester when we were learning about first language acquisition. Do you remember the phrase, nature versus nurture? Regarding personality, psychologists want to know the extent to which personality is determined by genetics versus by learning. The general consensus is that both play an important role in the development of personality. Yes, the behavioral theorists like Skinner believe that since personality refers to the way a person behaves, the behavioral approach says simply focus on the individual's behavior. If you want to change the person's personality, all you need to do is change their behavior. And of course, they recommend their method of classical conditioning or associative learning, operant condition or reinforcement, and observational learning or modeling. Carl Jung, on the other hand, believed that humanity has access to the collective unconscious, a storehouse of primitive ideas and images, which he called archetypes. The collective unconscious is made up of past events that are acquired genetically from our ancestors, perhaps all the way back to the beginning. Consider the fact that genetics determines our appearance, and to some extent how we behave. That genetic influence doesn't just come from our parents, but from their parents on back in time. As mentioned previously, the ELLs involved in this study are asked to determine their personalities by taking a very short personality inventory. You saw that inventory just now on slide 2. This is a method that is used in humanistic theory. Humanistic personality theorists are interested in people's conceptions of themselves and their goals. They stress the individual's capacity for personal growth, freedom to choose one's own destiny, and positive qualities. This approach views people as motivated by internal forces to achieve personal goals. This is sometimes referred to as phenomenological approach because of the focus on each person's unique experience with and ways of interpreting their world. Abraham Maslow was an important player in humanistic psychology. In studying motivation, he described a basic hierarchy of needs that laid the foundation for future work like Carl Rogers' person-centered therapy. Carl Rogers concluded that behavior is goal-directed and worthwhile. He believed that people are innately good and tend to choose adaptive, enhancing, self-actualizing behaviors. In his structure of personality hypothesis, he explained that we all have a concept of self and of an ideal self. People tend to maximize their self-concept by self-actualization. He viewed anxiety as useful because it motivates people toward self-actualization. Notice that one of the journals the English language learners in this project answered asked about who is the perfect English speaker, and can you be him? Similar to Rogers' humanistic approach, the cognitive approach emphasizes the interaction of a person's thoughts and behavior. Cognitive psychologists bring thoughts into the picture. They emphasize the idea that our thoughts precede our behavior. To change our behavior, we need to change our thoughts. So again, in this journal, when the ELLs were asked if they would like to be a person who has a great command of the English language, they might have had to imagine or think about themselves as that person before they actually achieve that goal. In discussing self-concept further, Rogers pointed out that if a person is rigid, he can't fit new behaviors into his existing self-concept. Our ELLs were asked to reflect on this in the personality survey. Let's learn a little more about the instruments that are commonly used by researchers in personality research. You might be able to use some of this information in the methods section of your research paper. Two important vocabulary words in personality research are trait and type. A trait is any readily identifiable, stable behavioral characteristic, whereas a type is a broad collection of traits that are interrelated. Type theories group together traits common to specific personalities. Trait theories study specific traits. Gordon Allport instructs that when we use these terms, we can say that a person can have a trait, but he or she cannot be said to have a type. Rather, he or she fits a type. Allport, a leading trait theorist, has found thousands of traits. Different researchers characterize traits in a variety of ways, but most agree that there are 5 primary traits. There are many ways to evaluate personality. In addition to observation, interviews, physiological recordings, there are different methods of testing the individual. The Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, or MMPI, recently revised as the MMPI-2, is the most commonly used objective personality test. It consists of 550 true-false items. Because this test is so long, I used the 10-item personality inventory, or TP, by Sam Gosling. Like the MMPI-2, the TP uses these trait terms. You'll experience the terms and their definitions on the TP that the ELLs took and that you will take. When an individual takes the MMPI-2, his responses are scored with a template and different personality characteristics are plotted on a chart. Scales such as depression, hysteria, hypochondrias, and so on reveal characteristics about the individual. Perhaps the 2 most important results for the MMPI are 1. The individual's strategy for dealing with stress, and 2. how effective that strategy is in dealing with anxiety. For our purposes in this assignment, students are simply asked about stress in 3 separate journals. There is no need to study the names of these theorists and the name of their theories, the vocabulary words. They will not be on an exam in this applied linguistics class. Like I said at the beginning of this presentation, these concepts come from psychology. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not an expert in these things. However, we do want to be able to, in a research paper especially, use knowledge of personality from the psychological point of view, using correct vocabulary and interpreting things in a better way. We don't want to go with gut feeling. So I hope that this PowerPoint was able to bring some of the psychology concepts closer to the primary source materials that you will be using to write your research paper.